Right, here's like a cluster of little yellow cells. That is our egg nest. Okay, egg nest.
I can't see.
You never learn.
The egg nest is right.
He's turning his back.
It's impossible to have you film it this way and for them to see it that way.
You need to turn back and forth.
Egg nest. That's where it all begins. Now in here are fairly mature ova, meaning they've moved through some of the stages of oogenesis. This happened early on. Began in utero. They're not completely mature as of yet, but they're almost there. And you have a certain number of them in this nest. And that number will last from puberty to age 50. It's a limited number of cells in the egg nest. It's not unlimited. Whereas in the male, it's unlimited production. Okay? So you have a limited number of cells here in the egg nest. Right? So the primordial follicle is the name of that cell, these cells in the egg nest. During the ovarian cycle, menstrual cycle, as you can see here, and they gave you the days, it's approximately 28 days, not quite a month. And they put, I think, now those are letters, so here's the days. They put the number of days around the clock, 7, 14, 21, and they're showing you that as the days pass, the primordial follicle will undergo different stages of maturation to prepare it for what we call ovulation. Ovulation is when the follicle is actually released from the ovary. I mean, literally, the ovary will break open and the follicle will be released. As you can see what's going on here, and that's what's going on over here. So about day what? 15, 16 of the cycle, the follicle should be released. And it's like 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, somewhere in here is the best time for fertilization. The egg has been released, it's making its way down the fallopian tube, the sperm's going to swim up and find it, and fertilization hopefully will take place. Somewhere in here is probably the best time. Okay? So, from primordial, it then becomes, and let me just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a problem. It's always a problem. Primordial to primary to secondary to tertiary to ovulation. All right? There's more steps there than we have here. Okay. So let's see if we can match them up. Primordial, primary, secondary, which looks kind of tertiary to me, to ovulation. So let's go backwards. Ovulation, obviously. Tertiary. We're going to have to call this, I don't know. Looks like a primary to me. It looks like we're missing secondary, right?
Yeah.
Looks like we're missing secondary somewhere in here. So, is it okay if we go primordial, primary, tertiary, and ovulation?
Yeah.
You okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because that seems to match our picture best. Let's look inside of our ovary, though. Let's look inside of our ovary, because in the ovary now matches what we have there. I think. Primordial, primary, secondary, tertiary, ovulation. Right? So this and that, dead on. This, they left one out. Right? Left one out, so don't get confused by that.
Did that feel secondary?
So it seems. So it seems. All right, so the egg nest with the primordial follicle. After a couple days, a couple of the eggs in there, a couple of the primordial follicles from the egg nest will start to undergo maturation under hormonal control. Hormones released by the ovary, by the pituitary, will tell a couple of them to start to mature. So here you see a couple of them are starting to go into the next stage, primary. And then one will survive and become a secondary. That same one will survive and become a tertiary. And then it'll be released. Ovulation will occur. It'll break out of the tertiary follicle. Notice that what's happening is that the egg, what will become the ovum, continues to be the little yellow structure, and there's some extracellular material being built up around it, right? You see, primary has a little bit of extracellular material, secondary now it's developing, tertiary's got this whole kind of wall of cells around the ovum, and then the ovum breaks out and those cells are left behind. And those cells that are left behind are of importance. That's this yellow stuff here. Here's the stuff that's left behind. This breaks out and goes into the fallopian tube. This is left behind, and this serves a purpose. Right? It becomes what's known as the corpus luteum. And the corpus luteum will continue to produce hormones. Those cells, that yellow thing, this thing, will continue to produce hormones while the egg is making its journey down the fallopian tube, with the hope that it will get fertilized. And if it gets fertilized, it will implant itself in the wall of the uterus. And the hormones being produced by this leftover group of cells enable this to implant if it becomes fertilized. If it does not become fertilized, it will make its way and it will come out when the lining is shed. And if it is not fertilized, this will atrophy and shrivel up and stop producing hormone, and the cycle will end. It becomes the corpus albicans, which is the atrophied, shriveled up remains of the tertiary follicle, of the corpus luteum. And then, if fertilization has not occurred, the lining of the uterus, the endometrium, which has become thick, full of blood, in anticipation of implantation, will just be shed, and you'll have the bleed. The release of the egg that was not fertilized, the release of the lining, which is not needed now, and tick, 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 tick. It'll start again on the other side. And a couple of primordial follicles from the nest will start to mature. One will survive, become the secondary, the tertiary. It'll be ovulated. The remaining cells will stick around inside the uterus, inside the ovary, and produce hormones. Corpus luteum will last until implantation. If implantation occurs, it will stick around for a while longer and keep making hormones. If implantation does not occur, it will atrophy and shrivel up, and the cycle will start again. Make sense?